You think you're paying for a chef's passion, for their years of dedication, but the truth is, the corporate giants are likely watching you from a monitor in a central kitchen, observing a production line flawlessly replicate mom's home cooking while calculating how many new stores they can open with the labor costs they've just saved. Hello, everyone. Imagine this. You're sitting in a restaurant that just oozes that cozy, bustling, authentic vibe. You're reading the menu with its tempting descriptions of traditional craftsmanship and freshly wok-fried. You eagerly order the 78 yuan braised pork belly. Have you ever stopped to wonder if that piece of meat might have begun its magical journey in the back of a refrigerated truck last year? This isn't science fiction. This is the surreal reality of the modern restaurant industry. And the recent public drama between the famous tech world curmudgeon Luo Yonghao and the restaurant giant Xibei has been more captivating than a palace soap opera. Old Luo threw down the gauntlet with a single sentence. Xibei is almost all pre-prepared meals. It's disgustingly expensive and it's nauseating. He didn't just criticize the food, he flipped the entire industry's table. The response from Xibei's founder was just as fierce, a triple threat of, "It's not pre-made, I'll sue you, and you can inspect any of our kitchens." But the most bizarre part of this whole affair, both sides were screaming at each other, but they weren't even in the same conversation. The story began, as all epics do, with a very minor incident. On September 10th, old Luo got off a plane and took his colleagues to Xibei for a meal. 5 people, about 15 dishes, costing over 800 yuan. Not cheap, but understandable for a decent meal in a major city. But as they ate, Luo's finely tuned product manager radar started buzzing. Something was off. The texture of the lamb, the temperature of certain dishes, it all had a distinct whiff of industrial mass production, an overnight, reheated kind of taste. So he took to social media and launched his torpedo. The message was short, brutal, and clear. "Xibei, you're serving glorified TV dinners at gourmet prices, and it's a ripoff." In just 15 minutes, the topic exploded online, getting hotter than a microwave in Xibei's back kitchen. Analytical. Why did this one complaint detonate with such force? Because it tapped into a massive, unspoken tension at the heart of the modern dining experience. First, let's understand Xibei. They are masters of marketing, the high kings of storytelling in the food world. Close your eyes. What do you picture when you think of Xibei? You picture the rustic, smiling faces from the lowest plateau. You picture the iconic red and white checkered tablecloths. You picture the bustling, open kitchens and their confident slogan, "Close your eyes and order, every dish is delicious." They have sold you an experience. You're not just paying for a plate of food, you're paying for the feeling of something natural, wholesome, and authentic. That feeling is their brand premium. Now, what are pre-prepared meals, or yuji cai? They are the pinnacle of the modern food industry. Their core logic is efficiency, standardization, and cost control. It's a precision assembly line that breaks down complex cooking into quantifiable steps, mass produces it in a central kitchen, then flash freezes and ships it to individual stores. All the staff on site has to do is heat it up, plate it, and serve. So you see, from a business perspective, Xibei embracing pre-prepared meals is not just logical, it's practically inevitable. It drastically reduces reliance on skilled labor, which is the single biggest labor cost. Data shows it can cut labor expenses by over 40%. It allows them to shrink the kitchen size in high-rent mall locations, freeing up more space for paying customers. The temptation is enormous, and Xibei's founder Zhao Guolong didn't just give in to it, he built a whole new brand around it, cleverly named Zhao Guolong's Kung Fu Cuisine, using his own name to mask the pre-prepared origin. But here's where the plan went wrong. the massive disconnect between price and consumer perception. When a customer walks into a Xibei with its artisanal branding and pays a premium, they enter into an unspoken contract. I pay you good money and you cook this food for me right here, right now. The price includes not just the ingredients, but the chef's skill and the restaurant's ambiance. Pre-prepared meals shatter that contract. The feeling is, I paid over 100 yuan for something that you just microwaved, which is no different than what I could do at home. So why am I here? It's like paying top dollar for a live concert by your favorite singer, only for them to walk on stage and say, my throat's a bit sore today, so I'm just going to play you my latest CD. The sound quality might be perfect, but the entire experience is a fraud. Old Luo's viral post simply tore through that flimsy curtain of illusion. He screamed the one thought every skeptical customer had been muttering under their breath. Isn't this just a boil-in-a-bag meal?
The escalation. Faced with the public relations firestorm, Xibei's founder went into full-on defensive mode. He filmed himself in a store, pounding his chest, threatening to sue Luo for millions in damages. He declared that all 400 of his kitchens nationwide were now open for public inspection. This is the classic move of a student caught cheating who then demands the teacher inspect their notes to prove their innocence. But the internet has a long memory. Netizens quickly dug up reports stating that Xibei's pre-prepared meal ratio once exceeded 80%, and even found videos of the founder himself championing the virtues of pre-prepared cuisine. The contradictions were more jarring than the taste difference between a fresh-cooked meal and a frozen one. Meanwhile, old Luo, fanning the flames, offered a 100,000 yuan bounty for hard evidence of Xibei using pre-prepared meals, turning the internet into a crowdsourced detective agency. The core of this farcical debate came down to a word game over the definition of pre-prepared. Xibei clung to a technicality, arguing that they use pre-processed ingredients from a central kitchen, like chopped meat and washed vegetables. But the final cooking step happens in-store. This is like arguing that a spicy gluten stick isn't a snack, it's merely a pre-combined product of flour and chili. But the consumers weren't buying it, especially when citizen journalists started posting photos from inside Xibei's kitchens, showing stacks of frozen pre-packaged ingredients. The knockout blow came when Luo revealed evidence of an 18-month shelf-life sea bass, 24-month frozen broccoli, and 9-month beef sauce. Netizens were horrified. One quipped, "This isn't a kitchen, it's a cryogenic archaeological site." Let's be clear, consumers don't necessarily oppose pre-prepared food. When you buy a cheap lunchbox, you know it's a ready meal. The fury comes from being deceived, from paying the price of a freshly cooked meal and receiving a pre-packaged one. It's the feeling of being played for a fool. The aftermath. The core of this farcical debate came down to a word game over the definition of pre-prepared. Xibei clung to a technicality, arguing that they use pre-processed ingredients from a central kitchen, like chopped meat and washed vegetables, but the final cooking step happens in-store. This is like arguing that a spicy gluten stick isn't a snack, it's merely a pre-combined product of flour and chili. But consumers weren't buying it, especially when citizen journalists started posting photos from inside Xibei's kitchens, showing stacks of frozen pre-packaged ingredients. The knockout blow came when Luo revealed evidence of an 18-month shelf-life sea bass, 24-month frozen broccoli, and 9-month beef sauce. Netizens were horrified. One quipped, "This isn't a kitchen, it's a cryogenic archaeological site." Let's be clear. Consumers don't necessarily oppose pre-prepared food. When you buy a cheap lunchbox, you know it's a ready meal. The fury comes from being deceived, from paying the price of a freshly cooked meal and receiving a pre-packaged one. It's the feeling of being played for a fool. The resolution and broader implications. The saga ended when China's National Health Commission announced that a new national standard for pre-prepared foods was imminent. Luo graciously declared victory and stood down. Xibei, however, was left licking its wounds, with daily revenues reportedly dropping by millions. The entire industry was shaken. Other major chains scrambled to add labels to their menus, clarifying which dishes were pre-made, or started live streaming their kitchens. The crisis of trust was palpable. Pre-prepared food is not the villain here. It's a necessary part of the industrialization of the restaurant business. The market is enormous and growing. The problem isn't using it. The problem is how you use it and how you communicate it. Some competitors have long been transparent about it and have earned consumer trust. Xibei tried to have it both ways. The high-end profits of a full-service restaurant with the low-cost model of a fast food joint. When they were caught, they got defensive. Conclusion. This 72-hour soap opera may ultimately change the rules of the game for the entire industry. The impending national standard, spurred by this public outcry, will force transparency. We may see a future of tiered, transparent dining. High-end restaurants will have to cook fresh. Chain restaurants will have to clearly label the pre-made ratio. Consumers will vote with their wallets. The lesson from the Great Xibei Low Showdown is simple. Pre-prepared isn't scary. Pretending it's fresh is. High prices aren't scary. Not being worth the price is. Consumers are willing to pay for an experience, for service, even for a brand name. But what they will never, ever be willing to pay for is deceit. Poetic closing. A poet of our modern age might say of this moment, "Old Luo just landed, sought a worthy meal, but found a taste too polished, too unreal. A high-priced bill for food's industrial art, a whispered truth that tore the brand apart. The kitchen's secrets, frozen and concealed by citizen detectives, now revealed. The market's roaring, hungry for a fix, but trust once broken is the hardest thing to mix." Outro. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.